Hello Cinnamon Bun. So this is definitely my first and, well, only coffee of the day because I only have one, but I've recently become addicted to caffeine again after being very addicted for a few years and then going cold turkey and then not really doing it, and now I am again, and the caffeine is yet to reach my brain, so hopefully I'll gain more energy and clarity as we go along with this. So I have 3 techniques for fleshing out characters to share with you today. It's maybe a little ambitious to fit all 3 of them into a single video, but I feel like they wouldn't really make sense without each other in this context. So I'm going to try it anyway, even if I have to kind of skim over them. And who knows, maybe someday down the line I will make an individual video to flesh out one or more of these techniques. So if you've watched any or most of my videos already, then you'll know that for me the most important thing about a character in terms of how they matter in the plot is their backstory and their motive, so their motive, goal and stakes. Those things are the core of a character, they're why they belong in your story, they're why they have a purpose in your story, and that's the basis on which you need to start. But having a good motive, goal and stakes and backstory is not the be-all and end-all of a character, obviously. You need to flesh them out, you need to give them humanity and facets. But fleshing out characters is one of those things where if you don't really know where to start, you can kind of just do it indefinitely. You can get sucked into it for eternity, and you can muddle around with a lot of things that you might never end up actually using. So these 3 techniques are all about creating very vivid, memorable characters quite efficiently without having to trawl through pages and pages of unnecessary details. So the second technique is something that you might have heard other writers mention before, and the other 2, however, they're all me. They all came from here, so let's get started. The first one is called the card game. So a little bit of an example. My favourite character from my first novel, State of Flux, is Helena. So Helena began as a drawing that I did actually, a fan character that I'd created for the movie Briggs. So because it was a drawing, I had an idea of what she looked like, but other than that, all I knew about her was that she was a drug dealer and that she was so germophobic that she wore gloves at almost all times. She ended up in State of Flux because in 2009 I was writing a novel that was completely unplanned for NaNoWriMo, and so I was like scrambling to find things to put in it, and so I found this drawing and I was like, you know what, she's going to be in this book. So I dropped the drug dealing part and I kept the germophobia and OCD, and instead I put her on the hunt of Flux, on the trail as it were, 30 years after she had disappeared. So over the years and drafts and revisions I added more and more layers to this character. She became a journalist. She ran this online magazine called The Nightly Arcus, which kind of was all about the subculture of her city, the prides and their kind of tussles and team-ups and their very precarious relationships with the official parts of the city. Now Flux disappeared before Helena was born. It was 30 years ago after all, but Flux and Helena are related by blood, which means the mystery of Flux's disappearance is very much intertwined with Helena's childhood, her family. Helena's closest relationship, her kind of brother, kind of father figure, was the person who was closest to Flux before she disappeared. So their whole relationship is dominated by solving this mystery. She is aloof and isolated and cool, but really lonely. This complexity came from taking a very simple idea for a character, which was really just that she was germophobic, she was OCD, and continually adding more layers and more relationships with other people and giving her new roles. And as I continued to work on State of Flux and work on other projects, I started to notice that I was having trouble giving other characters the kind of complexity that I'd managed to give Helena. And so I tried to create a technique that would kind of replicate that process that I'd gone through with Helena, and I call it the card game. So first of all, you need to create your card deck. So the idea is that you will have a handful of cards for a bunch of different categories. The cards can literally be anything. Just grab a scrap of paper, write things, cut them out. It doesn't have to be fancy in any way, shape or form. It's up to you how many categories you decide to use. Something that can be helpful is to use a different coloured pen for all the cards for the same category, and that means that you can quickly sort them into their various piles. So here are some of the categories you could use. Jobs and skills, characters from other stories, traits, nationalities, ethnicities, disabilities, or other kind of physical limitations, narrative or character tropes. The important thing is to try and make sure that every card has something you find kind of interesting on it. So don't pick the first characters you think of, pick some of your favourite characters. Don't pick any trope, pick some of the tropes that you personally love to read or watch in movies or playing games. They don't all have to be your favourites, but they all have to be something that you're like, hey, I'd be interested in writing about that. So I'd say 3 categories is probably a good place to start, and you could start by writing 6 cards for each category. If you had maybe 10 characters, you could go as far as having 10 cards for each category, and that way you won't be reusing them. So write them all down, cut them out, you've got your card deck. Now here's how you play the card game. So you play the card game for one character at a time, and to figure out which character to start with, make a list of all the characters that you would like to flesh out, which you don't really have a good idea of them. You find it maybe difficult to write them, you know their motive, but maybe not much else. Once you've got your list, number the characters in order of importance. So number 1 would have the biggest role in the story. It might be your main character or the lead of your ensemble, and on from there. And you're going to start by playing the card game for a character labelled number 1. So get a piece of paper and write their name on it. Now, blindly pick one card from each of the categories of your card deck and flip them over. Now, your task is to find a way to incorporate these elements into that character. Now, your first instinct when you see these will probably be, that can't fit. Your job is to try and drown out that voice as much as possible. Now, there definitely will be some cards which contradict really crucial, important parts of the character that you've already got. If, for instance, it's part of the character's arc, which you've already plotted, that they are very healthy and they take that health for granted and they don't have a lot of empathy for people who struggle with illnesses or disabilities, then it wouldn't make sense to then give them a disability. That would be contradictory. So you can turn that card back over, put it back in that category, and remove another one from that category. And you can repeat this as many times as you need to for as many cards as you need to, but try and only return a card when it directly contradicts something important that you already have established about the character. If it's just a maybe, if it's just a, oh, that might be quite difficult to incorporate, then keep it. So on your piece of paper, start making some notes about how you can incorporate this element into the character. And it doesn't have to be in the most direct, straightforward way either. If you get the card plumber, it doesn't mean that this character suddenly now has to be a plumber. It could just mean that maybe they trained as a plumber for a few months and decided they didn't like it. Maybe they were going to go into an apprenticeship after school. Maybe one of their parents was a plumber, and so they grew up knowing quite a lot about it just from being around them. One of my favourite categories for the card deck is favourite characters. For these ones, you just need to incorporate at least one aspect of that character on the card. So say you got the card Hagrid, you could use things like large and friendly, dropped out of school, loves animals, probably a little bit too much. If you're writing fantasy, you could use the fact that he's a half giant, you could make your character half giant, but if you're not, just change it to fit your genre. Maybe it's just that this character looked after another character the way Hagrid looked after Harry as a baby. You should be able to incorporate quite a few aspects from one of your favourite characters into one of your own characters without just suddenly turning them into a carbon copy. But as I said, you need to find at least one to play the card game right. So, the card game is a great way to kind of randomise aspects of your characters and to generate some unexpected complexity. It's very easy for us to fall into using stereotypes when we're building characters. So you'll find that a lot of the most interesting additions from the card game tend to be things that contrast quite sharply with how you originally thought of the character. So the second technique is the Myers-Briggs personality model. So the Myers-Briggs psychological model tries to map out and explain differences in our personalities. And I found that using it for my characters has really helped me get a sense of how they see the world, how they act in different situations, how they make decisions. The site I definitely recommend using for this is called 16personalities.com. Now I have seen other people recommend taking personality tests kind of in the persona of your character, with the view that you'll find out what their personality type is at the end. I have found this personally to be quite time consuming. What I prefer to do is a bit of a shortcut, but it does rely on you understanding the Myers-Briggs model, so understanding what each letter means. So I, for instance, am an INFJ, kind of, sometimes borderline. The Myers-Briggs test measures where you are on 4 different spectrums of personality. And which side of the spectrum you fall on will determine whether you're an I rather than an E, so an introvert rather than an extrovert, or an intuitive person rather than an observing person, so an S or an N. Now in reality, people are complicated. We do not just fall into one of two categories. There is a spectrum. Like I said, you could be 99% introverted, you could be incredibly introverted, or you could be 60% introverted, so very just on the borderline, almost ambiverted. Regardless, for the purposes of the Myers-Briggs test, wherever you fall on that spectrum, you're still classed as an introvert. So each personality aspect has these two poles, and I found the quickest way to find out what type of character is to go through each of the spectrums and decide which one they're closer to. So are they more of an introvert or an extrovert? Doesn't matter how much of an introvert or how much of an extrovert. For the moment, just pick one. If you do this for all the personality aspects, 4 or optionally 5, then you will end up with a type like INFJ or ESTP. From there you can head to that type page and start reading about what kind of people INFJs, for instance, are. If this fits with your idea of the character, then it will help you flesh it out. And if it doesn't, then you can go back to where you were and start looking at which of the letters you think you might have been wrong about. And remember, people are complicated, borderlines can exist and be fine too. For instance, one of my characters from North of the End is split between ISFJ and INFJ, because she sits on that kind of border between S and N. Once you've nailed down the character's type, it could be as simple as just adding it to their character sheet. You can go as far as creating a whole A4 character sheet based on their personality type, but I would really recommend just honing in on anything that you read in the description of their type which is particularly resonant, which seems like it's very true of them, which maybe provides some kind of deep insight into how they work and how they think. Now, the third technique that I want to tell you about is called the triptych. And I really love this one, guys. I am really excited about it. I only just discovered it very recently. If you have been writing for any period of time at all, you've probably made a mood board or a collage at some point for your novel, for an aspect of your novel, for a character. Lots of writers do this, using Pinterest, using Scrivener, or even old-fashioned paper and glue. I have done a lot of this too. One thing I did find though was that I could, in theory, just keep infinitely pinning things and pasting things forever, and there was no guarantee that any of that would actually end up in the book. My solution for this is limitation. So let me introduce the triptych. It's really, really simple. The triptych is, for any character, you are only allowed 3 visual references for them. No more than that. For minor characters, it could even be 2. This forces you to distill it down into the most potent, the most fitting images. And it forces you to decide between images or ideas instead of constantly entertaining a stream of new ones without ever acting on them. Plus, a triptych can very easily fit onto an A4 character sheet, leaving plenty of room for notes. And the images don't necessarily have to be of people, of actors, or face claims. They could be images of concept art, or fashion, or interior decor, a beloved possession. I personally find it a lot easier to write a character when I have a clear idea of their face. I'm a very face-centered person, but you might not be like that at all. So I always have a face picture in there, but maybe you don't need that. Maybe all of yours are about like the favourite things that they like to carry around. So there we have it. Those are the 3 techniques. I hope they help you out in fleshing out your characters and get you interested and excited about them. So I actually have a little character sheet template, updated a lot from last year, which has space for your triptych, so you should be able to just click on the images and replace them instead of having to fiddle about with them and make them make sense. And it has space for notes on their backstory and motive, any notes from the card game, and a little space for their personality type. There are 3 sizes of this template, a full A4 size for a main character, a half page for less major characters, and the quarter page ones for minor characters. Now unfortunately, due to tech things, I can only make these templates in Pages format, which is like the Mac Word program, but you can very easily replicate this in Word yourself, manually. As always, there will be a link below in the description. Okay, well, as always, I'm Rachel Stephen, novelist, YouTuber, Woodland Hellwitch. And this has been a video for my series for Preptober, which is a community project that I run for writers, all to do with prepping for NaNoWriMo. It's really good fun, and if you'd like to join us, you can join the conversation on Twitter. We are at prep_Tober, and if you don't want to miss out on any resources at all, then sign up to the emailing list, because things tend to get lost in social media. We all follow quite a lot of different things these days. If you'd like to see videos from me year round, then definitely subscribe as well. Good luck! Novel well. I'll see you later. I personally means just need to oh, my brain is so fuzzy. Just need to so get a piece of shaper, and then slowly, and then something, I don't know, just whatever, just do whatever. On her own line, I don't care what you do. That's more, I added more. So I drew her, I had a kind of idea. Just wanna go back to bed. Already. It's cold already. I will need to flash them out. You definitely